You've heard it all. Take the bath, book the massage, sip the tea, grab a coffee. But what if none of these activities touch the root of your fatigue, your weariness, your burnout? What if real self-care isn't something you schedule, but something you reclaim? Hi, I'm Dr. Phyllis, your coach, and this is the Own Your Yes podcast. We're continuing today in episode 88 in part 3 of our 4-part series, Unseen, Unspoken, Unwell, the real cost of constant motion. And in today's episode, I want to talk with you about the self-care myth. Yes, I said it. The self-care myth. When you hear the term self-care, what do you think of? For me, there was a time that self-care just wasn't something I thought about, or I knew I needed to do something, but it was a destination. It was something to do. There was something I had to schedule it. It was something that I would schedule to do self-care next week. Or I scheduled it, for example, on Thursday, or no, it wouldn't have been a Thursday. It would have been a Saturday or Sunday late in the afternoon, more likely a Saturday when I had time, when the kids didn't have activities, when I didn't have to work. I would carve out, okay, I'm going to go do this at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Now, I have to share this story with you. I will never forget, I had been given a gift certificate for a really nice day spa, for a massage, a pedicure, a manicure, everything. I can remember feeling so stressed from life, trying to juggle everything. And then I ended up, the way the day went, and I can't remember if it was a Saturday or if I happened to actually take a vacation day off. But, and to be honest, the way Phyllis was at that time, I still had don't you laugh. I had a pager. My phone was on. I think I actually probably didn't even take the whole day off. I just remember still getting phone calls from work, and I was running late. Now, supposed to be off, but I was still taking calls. And because of that, as I said, I was running late. I was tearing down the freeway, driving down the freeway to get to the spa. And when I got to those front doors, I was so stressed about being on time. I'll never forget, I just threw the doors open and I rushed, and everyone just looked at me, and I just could feel I was so on autopilot. I was just so wound up and keyed up and stressed because I was running late for another event or my to do. And I had a wonderful experience, but Imma be honest with you, it took time for me to calm down enough to actually be able to receive the benefits of the massage. And I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest. I came back a little bit more relaxed, but I can't tell you that I didn't feel maybe just as depleted. Maybe there's a little more gas in the tank, but I didn't come back with a full tank. And there's been other situations where we're supposed to take a vacation. And for me, vacation became the kids have a competition, um, family reunions, go on cruise. Very nice. Back years ago when we could. And um, my mom was still living. Yet I can't tell you I totally relaxed because one cruise I was potty training a toddler. I took on the role of activity director for for the cruise in my family, getting us to the cruise and having the kids and worrying about them getting their activities. I think you get the picture. And I'm sure many of you this resonates with you. But what I learned from those different activities and attempts at self-care, so to speak, although I could see you say, "Well, Phyllis, was that wasn't really self-care going on those cruises when you have the kids." Yet there is time built in when the kids are in the kids club and, you know, you're supposedly laying on the deck and relaxing. I was so keyed up, mind racing. It was so bad. We have a running joke even at my job. Um, one of my coworkers said, "Don't you remember that time you even answered the phone, the cell phone on the cruise?" I said, "Yeah, let's don't talk about it." It's not something I want to brag about. But I know you have done this too because you're like me, high achieving, do it all. We're very responsible. Um, we'll take it on for the team. But circling back, what I've learned from my attempts at these major symbolic events at self-care is that I realized that surface level care, doing something like an activity like that, wasn't really reaching my soul and the what my core spirit, mental state, spiritual state, physical state really needed to be renewed and refreshed because the real issue, while I was feeling exhausted, the real at the core of the issue is being overextended and not having boundaries. Ouch. And I'm sure that resonates with you. And I want you to think about, has there been a time that you were doing self-care? You were in a self-care event, activity, you had set this time aside, but you still felt numb and overextended and depleted and burnout. I know that for me, when I felt that way after returning from this this monumental or distinct self-care activity is I had to really ask myself, what am I really needing? What do I really need to renew, refresh, and replenish? And the main point I took away, sis, is that self-care isn't about an indulgence. And don't get me wrong, I am not criticizing or passing judgment because it is nothing wrong with going to the spa, taking a vacation. That you got to do that. And bear with me and hear me out. Self-care isn't about an indulgence. It's an intervention. It's a critical intervention that needs to happen. True self-care isn't about as much a temporary escape. It's about a daily realignment. If your self-care does not address your specific areas of depletion, it's just another task on your to-do list. Now, I want that to sink in. And really, what I'm saying is if you do not have a intentional approach to self-care and do the mindset work so that you truly can be open to that self-care activity or be truly engaged in the self-care moment and experience. It's just another thing on the to-do list. It's just a temporary escape that maybe you go and have a blast, but then you come back and you curl up in the ball because you're like, I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to come back to my life. You don't want it to end. And that's usually because you've waited too long to do something to renew. I've been there. When I wait too long to take a break, to realign, then it's like you don't even want to go back. You're dreading going back. And sometimes when you put off self-care to these specific scheduled events and you're not doing anything on a daily basis, you're so worried and preoccupied with you're counting the moments, the days may it be, or the hours until you got to go back to your life, that you can't enjoy the moment. You can't enjoy the massage. You can't enjoy going and getting whatever it is that you have said, this is going to be my self-care moment, because your mind is already thinking like, okay, well, I've got this to do next. So, oh my gosh, I only have 15 more minutes to do this. Oh, I only have 30 more minutes to enjoy this. It becomes a temporary, superficial thing. Self-care is a mindset, sis. So we have to really address these myths around self-care so that you really can shift your mind and incorporate self-care naturally into your life. So it's not seen as an indulgence and it's not seen as something another to do. Something else on your to-do list to check off. So I want to share with you a way of unpacking this difference between what often has told us about self-care and really for you to help you look at really what your soul is starving for, what your core, what your spirit, what your emotional state, what your physical state is really starving for. And I call it soul care versus surface care. So let's break down 3 myths that you can look at, and I want to help you reframe your thinking on. The first myth is self-care is a reward for when everything else is done. It's almost like when you were a kid or with your children, like, okay, when you get all your work done, then you can do this. Or if you eat all your vegetables, then you can have dessert. Wouldn't you agree that often we live our lives that way? Like, okay, well, if I finish all this work, then I can then I can go for a walk or I can eat something good. And we will talk about it because I pause because it makes me even thinking about eating and stress eating. And that's a whole subject for another episode we'll talk about. But the myth is self-care is a reward for when everything else is done. But sis, the truth is real self-care is a rhythm. It's not it's not a reward. You don't earn your rest, you deserve it, you steward it. Rest or taking a pause or paying attention to what your soul needs, what your emotional state needs, what your body needs is it's a part of life. It's not something you earn and you do only after you do these 1,000 things on your list. It is a must. It's a must to keep yourself going and fulfilling the life that God has called you to live, to fulfill the purpose that He has created you for. And you have to have the right mindset so you can steward that. Just like you steward the other things in life. Keeping yourself at the very best that you can be is a part of your responsibility, and it's a part of living your best life. So being a good steward of every day that God allows you to wake up. And there's certain things that you need to do for your emotional self, your spiritual self, and your physical self so you can do those things that God has called you to do and continue to grow. And as I said, enjoy life. The second myth is that, as we kind of touched on, that self care is a moment. It's the bubble bath, it's the manicure, it's the spa day. And I enjoy all those. Yet, the truth is, sis, soul care is a mindset. As I just said, anchored in boundaries, honesty, and replenishment. So we have soul care, right? This umbrella of self care. There's the soul care, which really gets deep down, and the surface care. So we talked about myth one, that self care, that myth that self care is a reward. Let me back up. That self care is a reward for when everything else is done. That's what we would call the surface self-care, right? That self-care is a reward for when everything is done. But soul care is a rhythm. It's not a reward. It's not something you earn. It's a must. You steward it. The second myth we talked about is that self-care is a moment, right? That bubble bath, the manicure, the spa day, or, you know, going out with friends, whatever that is, this specific thing that you schedule. That's that surface care. But the soul care is a mindset anchored in boundaries, honesty, and replenishment. So, thirdly, is the myth that self care is selfish. Wow. How many times have you felt that, oh my gosh, I can't do that? It's not right. It's not right to take off. Um, this is my responsibility. It's not right for me. That means that I'm weak if I'm saying I need to do something for myself. Sound familiar? So the third myth is that self-care is selfish, right? And so you don't do it. But that's when you're dealing from that mindset of surface care, right? That surface type. But the true deep down soul care is sacred. You can't pour. They tell you can't pour from an empty cup. I've talked about you can't drive your car of life. You can't drive on an empty tank. You can't pour from a dry well. You can't get water from a dry well. The old ground wells. You can't pour from an empty pitcher. Whatever resonates with you is that you, sis, if there's nothing in the tank, if there's nothing in the cup, there's nothing. And when I talk about like life is like a car, is that when your tank is not, when there's no gas in the tank and you're just trying to survive on fumes, it just doesn't work. And God never called you, sis, to live on fumes or to live on empty. Nowhere in the Bible has God told us as his children to live from an empty cup, to live on fumes, to live depleted. Just as he talked about in the Bible that he doesn't want us losing our taste, right? We are the salt. Jesus also in the Bible talked about the importance of not losing our taste, our flavor, our spice, our energy, our passion, our faith. It's self-care from a soul care perspective. It's not selfish. From the surface, if you get caught up in that surface care, then you feel like, well, I can't spend the money. I can't take time off work. I can't. But when you come at it from the soul care perspective, it is a necessity. God wants you to be your very best, your very best. So this week, I want you to look at your thoughts on self care. And I want you to think about what's holding you back from replenishing and renewing. Are you holding on to some myths about self-care? So, because I do think we may need to change the way we talk about self-care and talk about soul care. Because soul care really is about how can we be the best we can be? How can we live the best life? Because that's what God wants us to do. Doesn't mean we don't have challenges in life, but He wants us to live the best life that we can, to prosper. And that comes from soul care. And in soul care, when we do the right, when you do the right soul care, and it's a daily thing, then you stay connected to Him, you stay connected to who you are, you stay connected to what's most important to keep you aligned with where He wants you to go. So you can be the best you can be and you can enjoy life. But you have to do the soul care and not get caught up in the self-care myth. So, again, this week, your homework is to look at self-care and think about if you were to change your mind in thinking about self-care and focus more on it from a soul care perspective. What is one thing? And you can ask the Lord to help you identify what is your soul really needing so that you feel that it would give you motivation, it would give you inspiration, it would make you feel engaged and connected with life, with yourself, with who God has called you, that would help you reconnect with your passions and your purpose. One thing. What is one thing that your soul is craving to do that would make you feel frequently during the week? I'm a believer of daily. That would make you feel alive and that you just weren't living on this treadmill or this hamster wheel. One thing that you could do for your soul care. I pray that this episode has been helpful for you and that you'll share it. And I look forward to seeing you and talking with you next week for part 4 of our series. Love you. Take care. Bye now.